I wonder if anyone suspected me of my habit, my addiction. It was on a whim, really, when I decided to use inhalants for the first time. I was sick, frequenting the bathroom often while my body purged everything I ate in combination with somewhat large amounts of blood. Sitting there on the pot was often boring, and the onset of these moments were hardly predictable, so I rarely had time to grab some sort of reading material. I often read the backs of bottles of shampoo, hairspray, air freshener, anything I could get my hands on to alleviate the boredom. If I was lucky, one of the boys would have left their World of Warcraft guide sitting on the sink for me to flip through. Of everything, though, the warning on the back of the air freshener can intrigued me the most. Caution, use only as directed. Intentional misuse by deliberately concentrating and inhaling the contents can be harmful or fatal. Help stop inhalation abuse. From prior experiences running with the wrong crowd back at my old school, I knew that warning meant it could get me high. Previous to this, I'd been the type to pop pills, having easy access to them since my doctors always prescribed me all kinds of crazy shit that was more likely to fuck me up than actually help my persistent mental and physical problems. Every now and then I'd have a smoke or a drink whenever my underage self could get my hands on it. Anything to get rid of the pain I was constantly dealing with, thanks to my poor health. By the time I'd started considering inhaling the contents of this air freshener can, I'd been clean for months, having recently moved away from my doctors and my father's money that could give me all the drugs I'd wanted. I saw that air freshener as a possible return to the times when I'd been happiest and felt most alive. It took me several days of picking up the can, staring at it, and putting it back down before I could work up the courage to actually try it. The can did say, after all, that inhaling it was potentially fatal. I did not want to die. I eventually decided that if I only took one huff, it couldn't possibly hurt me and I would still be able to get a little high. I never liked getting majorly fucked up anyway. Something about losing all control of myself while under the influence of a drug never appealed to me, yet the pleasant buzz of a mild high always attracted me like nothing else. At first, I couldn't decide how to go about inhaling it. I never heard of anyone using air freshener to get high, but I knew it was possible from the labeling of the can itself. Eventually, I figured out that if I depressed the trigger only a small bit, I could get the gas without shooting off the liquid as well. I took in only a small bit through my nose and mixed with air. Just one hit and I felt pleasantly lightheaded, with little colored dots surrounding my field of vision, much like how I felt while drunk. A small, almost insignificant ringing noise accompanied it, and then, just like that, the feeling was gone, leaving me feeling slightly but decidedly off, as if something was not quite right. Almost tired, but not quite. That off feeling persisted for several hours, but I didn't mind it. Somehow its presence made me feel like I was able to better concentrate on my current writing project. The words flowed almost effortlessly through my fingers. It was several days before I tried it again, and when I did, I again felt the same feelings as before, only a little stronger. I decided then that I needed that feeling, needed that high. It somehow made the entire world less disgusting to look at, and the filth of the house I now lived in somewhat less vile and easier to ignore. After a time, I started getting headaches when I used too much, but I simply took an Excedrin for the pain, and enjoyed the high I got from the caffeine in the pill. I continued using it up until I was taking 2 or 3 hits per bathroom gut dump session. It got to the point to where I didn't ever know how much time would pass while I was in there, but my ass would always be numb from sitting on that goddamn toilet for so long. Despite this, it took several weeks for me to finish off that can of air freshener and move on to the can of hairspray. Immediately upon using the hairspray, I realized that it took far less from it to get myself to that pleasant lightheadedness I enjoyed so much. I went back down to taking only 1 hit per gut dump session. Somehow the sound of the gas entering my nose made me think of a choir of black boys all dressed in blue or maroon robes. I never quite knew why, but I found it entertaining, as those thoughts would inevitably lead me to thinking of Kermit the Frog, possibly because I knew a black boy who went to a nearby private school named Kermit, and the uniform shirts he had to wear were always maroon. As time wore on, I told myself I needed to stop and find an alternate source for my high because the can of hairspray was an expensive brand and I knew my mom would be pissed if it got all used up so quickly, but I never actually stopped. I found myself another can of air freshener to use instead of my mom's hairspray and continued my habit until it was empty. Around then, before my second can ran out, I needed to go to the hospital for a week for several blood transfusions due to the severity of my anemia at the time. The doctors all seemed amazed that I was alive, much less walking and talking and functioning like a normal human being without passing out somewhere along the way. I'd been going to school, lugging around a big heavy bag with my books, and there had been times then where my vision would nearly black out and I would almost collapse, but I never did. A part of me wonders if I was able to do that because I would push myself forward, muscles aching and trembling, and focus entirely on the movement of putting one foot in front of the other to avoid the embarrassment of passing out in a public place. That same part wonders if the chemicals in my system help with that focus, because the feeling of being high again as if I had been huffing always seemed to coincide with those dizzy spells. When I got out of the hospital, I felt better than ever, free from my addiction to inhalants, free from the restrictions that the anemia caused, free from the feeling of pain as I was back on the medications I'd been using before. Once those pills ran out though, and I couldn't ever convince my mother to refill the prescription, I returned to the inhalants. I would continue huffing for another year before I realized the very real possibility that this could very well kill me. I was at my mom's fiance's parents' house, and while I was in their bathroom doing the usual, I realized that this high was different. My heart rate went up drastically, and I felt as if I would faint, much like the since-returned anemic spells I frequently had. I forced myself to lay down on that dirty bathroom floor, hoping it would pass. It felt like time dragged on, and my heart began to ache. I prayed that I was not dying, and eventually it slowed and went away. What felt to me like hours had really only been a matter of minutes, but it was enough to scare the ever-living hell out of me. I didn't touch inhalants for several months after that, fearing that if I did it again, I would die. But the can of air freshener always called me back, and I once again fell into the habit, though I was slightly more cautious about it now. I'm not sure what changed, but in recent weeks I haven't really felt the urge to inhale, and reading some of these other experiences, I know I don't want to ever touch it again. I've been free of it for several weeks now, yet my mind feels fuzzy. I know I destroyed something with my abuse. The headaches come more frequently, and they often turn to migraines, which by themselves are an entire new painful trip of their own. Now I just get high off of the Excedrin. I can't be sure what it is, but I'm positive it's the caffeine in it that causes my high, as I am still anemic and I've lost weight recently. I don't mind, caffeine is a legal substance. Looking back, I know I shouldn't have started using inhalants. It's made my already poor memory worse, and there are holes that cover nearly the entirety of my life prior to now. I doubt I'll ever regain those memories, and not having a past to look back on is far more painful than any physical hurt I have to endure. It's a mistake I regret constantly, and I can only be consoled by my excessive need to keep a record of things I've done in the day. But even with reading those, I feel like I'm reading someone else's story. I'm still young though, and I have time to make more memories to replace the ones I lost. I'm lucky I pulled out of the habit when I did. This is my first day clean off of my former drugs of choice, gasoline and duster. I have been heavily abusing these over-the-counter inhalants since I was 16, now 19. I originally came to this site last week with logical and supporting information. I now have realized how fucked up I am after getting advice from you guys on how dangerous inhalants are. I've been working as a groundskeeper at a housing facility, and I'm typing this message to Blue Light in the shed where this fucking shit all began. I'm staring my past in the fucking face. These fucking gas cans that I used to achieve spiritual-based intoxication. I fell in love with the dissociative factors of gasoline, and now day 2 of being off of it, I feel like fucking shit. I have intense cravings of one more huff, and I know I can't make it through the day without hitting it. I don't know what's become of my life, and in the next couple of weeks I might just huff myself into a permanent coma. I now have realized after temporarily ending the abuse that it was inseparable from nerve, heart, and organ damage. Everyone knows the entire time I was destroying my body, but no one, not even my coworkers or friends, did an intervention. They let me throw my future into the fucking shithole. I have a weird sense of touch. I can't feel shit in my left hand. My heart has sudden intense beating sessions on and off. It feels like I'm having a heart attack daily, and my short-term memory is fucked. I stutter constantly and I'm fucking pissed. I destroyed every single functioning organ with inhalants. I was a smart kid with a future. Now I'm going to huff myself into a walking vegetable. If I'm already going down the path, why not finish what I started? Will the damage self-heal over time? I need fucking answers, man. I'm over my head in this shit. To huff or not to huff, I'm incredibly and hopelessly addicted to fucking gasoline. Please message me with help or comment on my post with advice. Please, I'm done with this shit. My brain is fucking fried. Pause the video and click the link of this story in my description. You'll see with just how bad the story was typed that this shit fucked him up. That's all I want to say. Now let's move on to the next story. My story starts out pretty simple. I was in my shed one day and found a tank of Freon R22. I had always looked down on huffing, but I was depressed, so I took a whippet balloon and filled it up, inhaled. My voice got deeper, and this is where I started doing it frequently, making prank calls with the voice, etc. Finally, after about a week of inhaling on this 30-pound tank, I got the weirdest feeling in my mouth, like chalk dust. There was even a little demon or gremlin that would appear at times. This was only the beginning. Being in a fuck it mood, I went to the shed and took a can of gas, opened the carb hole and sucked the fumes straight from the nozzle. At first, I was just amazed by how the wood grains would form shapes and images. Later, I actually found myself talking to what I call the gas buddies, the hallucinations. One day when I was huffing, I thought my friend died because the hallucination of him came to me. I found myself huffing, not only for the visuals, but for the company of these imaginary friends that would come to me when I would start to huff. I have been struggling with this addiction for about 7 months now. At one point in time, I noticed some neurological damage, for one side of my finger was numb for about a month. I still fight the constant urge to inhale the evil fumes. All the hours I spent with my eyes closed, inhaling and visualizing very prominent shapes, people, places, sometimes seeming so real that it felt as if I had been warped to another dimension. I always just thought kids huffed to get a buzz. I never got that. I thought I was the only one who hallucinated off of it. For a while, I thought it was brain damage, which I now know that I do have some. If I look at an object for a couple of seconds and close my eyes, its outline will appear in various colors. At one point in time, I was contacted by a guy's voice. His name was Lord Zonar. He said,
"I will grant you 3 wishes to,"
used a very long made-up word,
"your parents."
He kept saying this and it echoed in my head. I asked what the word meant. The reply?
"To kill, to kill, to kill."
It kept echoing in my head over and over, and I didn't touch this shit for about a day or two, but soon found myself in its clutches again. I now have boarded up any possible openings to the shed and put a padlock on it, giving the key to my mom. If I were to include every single detail, bad or good, this would end up being a novel. All I can say is thanks to the people who submitted their reports on the similar situation, for now I know I'm not the only one. I have experienced a lot, from A to Z, including crack cocaine and IV drugs, but the psychological addiction of this fuel had been the hardest to quit. If I could do it again, I wouldn't make the same mistake by even experimenting once, because as soon as I got those closed-eye visuals, I was hooked. Take heed of my words, please. I am less scarred by my past IV use than I am by this horrid, horrid addiction of huffing. Two nights ago, I was bored, and so I decided to take a hit, maybe half lungs full, of a compressed air product used for blowing dust from computers. The chemical is difluoroethane. I had done this before, but the most prominent effect for me has been a strange tingling sensation when I touch things, or in general. It's difficult to explain. It's almost anesthetic-like. After taking this hit, I got the regular effects, and then they eventually faded away and I felt normal again, so I stayed up a little while doing stuff on the computer. I hadn't done any since then, but the next night I went to the bathroom. I took a shit, and a few moments after leaving, bam, I got the sensation again, as though I'd just taken another hit, even though I hadn't done it in 24 hours. This scared the shit out of me. It didn't make sense that I'd be affected by something that had worn off 24 hours ago. I didn't get it. To make matters worse, the sensation did not go away. Several hours passed and I still felt tingly. I searched Usenet and the usual forums for similar complications and found none. I figured that I must have swallowed some of the gas into my stomach and going to the bathroom must have caused my body to absorb it or something. So I decided to go to bed and hope that it was gone by the morning. The next day when I woke up, the day I post this, I still had the feeling. I continued to have the feeling for 7+ hours, even as I write this, although I don't notice it unless I grab something or sit down. I hope it will be gone soon, although it could take several days since it hasn't gone away already. I really hope it goes away. I'm scared to think about it. The effect's intensity seemed to have varied during the day. Sometimes it's not very noticeable, and other times it's very noticeable. I am worried that maybe I permanently damaged my brain or nervous system or something. I do not recommend using it. In fact, stay the fuck away from it. I know I will never touch the shit again.